Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Legacy Luxe. Today we uncover the success of a man that's built a legacy dedicating his life for justice and fighting for his clients, and essentially unafraid to do what's right. Now, in a field where persistence meets principle, Sach Fernando has built a name that carries weight and reputation. He's been recognised by the Australian Financial Review and named as Victoria's #1 personal injury lawyer. Sach has built a legal practice that spans all over Australia, grounded in courage, integrity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. As a specialist in personal injury law, he's become known not just for his results, but for his refusal to accept anything less than fairness for his clients. Sach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yara. Thanks for having me.
No, that's okay. So I think the first thing we'd like to dive into is that you've built one of the most respected practices in the country. What first drew you into law, and more specifically as well, personal injury?
Quite a personal story, Yara.
Okay.
I watched my mum's legal practice and that inspired me. And I still remember being about 6 or 7 and my mum's practice was in our home. So clients used to always come. I used to greet them. And then I, at one point, was her receptionist. So it was really nice to watch my mum with her clients. And then as time progressed, and this is quite a personal story, my mother and father's relationship broke down. And so for me, during that time, watching the injustice of the family law process also inspired me to want to change the family law system. And so that was one of the other driving factors. Now, why personal injury? Personal injury because that's where I fell into. So in 2008, I clerked at a number of law firms, including Allen's, which is now Linklaters, which is a Magic Circle firm, K&L Gates, and Landon Rogers. They were all top-tier, mid-tier law firms. But then you may or may not remember the global financial crisis. No. And so some firms who offered me roles unfortunately couldn't go ahead with offering those roles because of the GFC. And so I found myself applying everywhere. And I had a friend who was working at this personal injury law firm, which was a boutique law firm at the time in the suburbs. And she said, Sach, you should apply. The boss said that they want to increase the male numbers in the firm. And I said, all right, well, I'm happy to do anything at the moment. I just want a job. And so I applied, I got the job, and I just grew to love the jurisdiction. I was initially in transport accidents. I was representing victims of transport accidents to begin with, and those who have injured themselves in public spaces. And then I was offered an opportunity to work at a large corporate law firm working for the insurers. I took that opportunity 2 years after having commenced at my previous firm. But I must say, Yara, I did not love that time because it was representing the insurers. And I had gone into law to represent individuals and help people. It was this concept of wanting to help people that was my motivator for being a lawyer. And so when I was helping the big insurance companies, and unfortunately in insurance law, it's all about being commercial and saving money for insurance firms, I must say I didn't really get the job satisfaction that I desired from my profession. And so I went back to that previous law firm and developed a practice in workers' compensation, which I just grew to love.
Yeah. So you would say personal upbringing really influenced the way you view justice and fairness, even getting into law to begin with.
Oh, absolutely.
And it influenced.
Absolutely. And if I can reflect here for a moment in terms of justice and fairness and where that originates from me, for me, 2 deeply personal stories, which I'll share with you. One was being in high school in 1999, year 7, in Mrs. Kapoor's English class. I had migrated from Sri Lanka in 1995, so I'd only been in Australia for 4 years. And it was the 90s, and back then, especially where we resided, it was predominantly an Anglo-Saxon demographic. So I was one of the only brown boys in that whole school. And since starting high school, I had this one individual within my class who was calling me names, and the name was Black Arab. And it kept getting getting repeated. And I had raised it with some teachers, nothing was done. And then it was Mrs. Kapoor's Year 7 English class where I heard it, and I just turned around and then I said a few words, which I won't repeat on this platform, which Mrs. Kapoor also heard and said, you to the coordinators and you to the coordinators. But that was my first memory of standing up for what's right and standing up for what I thought was justice, because I knew that I deserved to be in this country and I did not deserve to be called names. The other sense of justice, again, a very deeply personal story involving, which I touched on earlier, my parents' separation. Sadly, the situation was one of domestic violence, and I still remember hiding under the bed whilst my mother was being beaten up. And so I remember the injustice of all of that, and for police to come and not do anything about the perpetrator, and having to live that over and over again. That was very difficult, and what I perceived was very unjust, because I didn't think any woman or any child should have to fear their husband or their father. And I also knew that the law should be doing more to protect women and children. So that was also another situation where I felt a real sense of justice and fairness needing to take place, which also influenced my decision to practice law.
Wow, that's truly inspiring. And I think a lot of the listeners right now can feel that relationship with you, how you've built something from scratch, because you truly feel it. And it's different from, I think I hear it a lot these days where people go into law just for the money and, you make a lot of money as a lawyer. This is truly what a lawyer needs, having that touch and emotion that comes along with wanting what's right, what's fair, and fighting for your clients. And that's truly admirable, Sash. Thank you for sharing that story with us.
My pleasure.
Then how do you think failure or rejection as well may have played a role in your growth?
Okay, so I failed a lot. I mentioned earlier about being rejected by the law firms where I clerked, primarily, as I understood, because of the global financial crisis. But nonetheless, it felt very much like a rejection, because you work hard to get those clerkships, you perform, and then you're not made an offer. And it was very devastating for me. I remember the day that the offers were made, and I remember crying, thinking, why me? Why, I did all the right things. And then there was also another situation where I mentioned the insurance law firm I worked at. I was not a good insurance lawyer. I was not a good defendant lawyer. Like I said, I went into law to help people, and I just was not getting the satisfaction from that role. And I remember being told by one of the senior partners at that law firm, Sach, maybe look for a job somewhere else in a different jurisdiction, because I don't think workers' compensation is for you. I remember hearing that, and this was in 2012, and I was devastated. I thought, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm just a bad lawyer. Maybe I need to look for a job somewhere else. Those words, and I was a second-year lawyer at that time, really impacted me. But then when I went back to plaintiff personal injury law and started doing what I did for the people that I served and getting that job satisfaction, knowing that I was making a difference, my passion just grew. And those words from that partner at that law firm were was my motivation to keep going and to keep succeeding. And then whilst I was enjoying the work I was doing, there was another incident in that workplace where I was promised a promotion which didn't eventuate. And again, I felt like a failure, because I thought, well, I've hit all the KPIs that they set for me. Why now has the goalpost been moved? And at that stage, I thought, do you know what? Perhaps this isn't failure. This is a sign that I need to do my own thing, start my own law firm, and be the master of my own destiny. Because relying on others for your success, and whether that be climbing that corporate ladder, carries with it some risk and uncertainty. And I had worked there loyally for about 8 years. I'd given all my heart and soul to that company for about 8 years. And I thought, you know what? Now it's time for me to do something of my own and be the master of my own destiny, do things a bit differently, in my view, do things a bit more efficiently, save clients costs, and do it compassionately.
Yep. And you would say that drive and persistence was what made you help realize that your passion laid on the other side of workers' comp. Because initially you were in that same field, but were there moments of doubt where you thought maybe workers' compensation is not for me at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was at that insurance law firm, I was really struggling to understand the concepts. And so I genuinely, when I heard those words from that partner, I thought maybe he's right.
Yep.
Maybe this isn't meant for me. But then when I was doing it, when I was representing the individual, there's a lot of heart and soul that I give to my practice, and I represent some of the most inspiring individuals, Yara. I'm representing them during the worst time of their lives. You're talking about people who've lost limbs, who've suffered debilitating back pain and they can never work again. They can't put food on the table. And so I get a lot of satisfaction in representing people when they're at their lowest.
Yep.
And it's not just the advocacy, it's about getting to know the individual as well and their families. And all of a sudden, you become a member of their family and they become a member of mine.
Yep. Okay. And as you've mentioned, you go up against quite major insurance companies.
Yes.
What gives you the confidence to go against such powerful systems?
Yeah, it's like David and Goliath. Yeah. But at the end of the day, just because they're a big company does not mean their advocates, their lawyers are better than me or any member of my team at Maxium Injury Lawyers. Yeah. At the end of the day, there is a panel of law firms that the Victorian Work Cover Authority allocate. And those lawyers are brilliant, but it's the confidence I get is from knowing my client, knowing the law, knowing the strengths of my case, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of my opponent's case, knowing who my opponent is, and being able to present my case with confidence. And I'm able to do that because I know my client, I know my case, and I know what the medical evidence says. And Yara, I like to humanise negotiations because for insurance lawyers, they look at a number. They look at the medicine, they look at the medical records, but they don't get to meet my clients. They don't get to hear from them directly, whereas I do. And so having had the relationship with the clients for quite an extensive period of time before engaging in negotiations, I know what will win their case. I also get confidence from the timing of these negotiations. Yep. For example, if I know it's approaching end of financial year, I know that my opponents want to resolve matters. They've got KPIs that they need to meet. And some trickier cases, I will make sure that those cases are applied for at a time where negotiations will come towards the end of that financial year.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I was actually about to ask you, following this, you've been named Victoria's #1 lawyer and what it means, being a truly exceptional lawyer. But I think you've answered my question before that. You've got the knowledge, your opponents, your client. I think you also connect with them on an emotional level, which is different to just them being a name on a piece of paper. It makes you want to fight for them harder. And like you mentioned earlier, they're not just a number.
Yes.
But is there anything else you would add on to that, do you think?
I do what I do with a lot of passion. And I make it clear to my opponents that at the end of these discussions is an individual who is seriously injured.
Yep.
And I humanise the negotiations and discussions with them. I talk about my clients, not just their medical information, but also their pain and suffering consequences and what that's done to the individual and their families.
Yep.
So I think making it a bit more human allows me to achieve good outcomes. And Yara, there's been a number of cases where insurance lawyers have said, Sach, that's the final position, take it or leave it. And I've been able to push them to offering some more money for my clients. I've not charged the client any more money for that. I have given everything to the client, but equally, I know that even though a final offer is a final offer, I respect that, but I am unafraid to push the envelope so that I can get some more money for my clients, money that they deserve, money that will last them, hopefully, a long time until they get back on their feet.
So you're a fierce advocate for your clients. That's very obvious. How do you maintain, though, staying calm underneath that pressure as well in terms of a negotiation, but also maintaining that level of empathy for your client?
Very good question. And I must say one thing about being passionate is, unless that passion is controlled, it can be very destructive as well. I think the passion is a real strength of mine, but it also makes me a bit emotional. And so I have to be very careful, because as lawyers, we're taught not to be emotional and be factual. And that's so important. It's so important not to take things personally. But when you're in an industry where you're dealing with individuals and they constantly are talking about the pain of what they've gone through, the impact of the injury on their families and what that's done. And in some cases, the consequences are devastating. It's broken families apart. It's hard not to get a bit emotional, but it's important to be factual. It's important when I'm dealing with clients to be empathetic, even if they are emotional and at times aggressive or passive aggressive, to keep my composure and direct them to what I can and can't do. And what I make it clear from the outset is to my clients, you're employing me to get you money. And my job is to do my due diligence, go through all of your medical records and reports with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that your case is strategically presented at the right time to get you the optimal result.
Yeah.
So long as they know what the scope of my role is, the relationship can be managed. Now, with my opponents, sometimes negotiations can become very heated. And I've had not many, but some opponents take personal digs. And it's so important that I'm calm and not responsive when personal attacks are given. And mind you, this has happened so infrequently, but I do a number of things to keep calm, Yara. I go to the gym regularly. I do breath work. And before I engage in a difficult conversation, I'll take out 3-4 minutes away from the office by myself, just breathing. And I do 30 breaths in a row and a deep breath in and out at the end of the 30. And I repeat that 3 times if I have to go into a hard negotiation or a hard conversation with a client.
Yep. So you keep that human element very much alive in a practice, and also in a field where it can be very procedural as well. Is that something you would say that filters down to your entire team?
Yes.
Finding that right balance.
It is. Yes, it's procedural, but we're dealing with people. And sometimes outlining the procedure and process and the law, and this is the time we can do it, this is how we do it, this is what you can expect to get. Explaining the process doesn't always help because we're dealing with people who are highly emotional and they just want their cases to settle. They just want finality and closure so they can move on, because being part of an insurance scheme is not fun. Being part of an insurance scheme means that you are regularly questioned about the legitimacy of your claim. You are sent to insurance doctors who often will provide reports that will call into question the legitimacy of your claim and your credibility as an individual. So clients don't appreciate fully that there is a process and procedure. But what I tell my team is to be factual and to hear, to listen to our clients. They may be emotional and they're entitled to be emotional. Whilst you're not their psychologist, whilst you're not their friend, you are their advocate. So listen, let them talk. And then respond with empathy and kindness. Tell them you're sorry to hear that they're in this situation. Not so much, I understand completely what you're going through, because none of us do. We're lawyers. We've not lived this life that they're currently living.
Yeah.
But to listen and show them that we're here to listen. The relationship really strengthens when clients feel they're heard, and sometimes they are venting. And yes, we lawyers are very time poor. We're going from one case to another, And you might not necessarily have time to hear all of this, but it's important, Yara. It's important not in every phone call, and you've got to manage these relationships and conversations. But as personal injury lawyers, it's so important we listen to our clients and we direct them down the right path.
It's part of who you are as a team.
Absolutely.
But leading now multiple locations across Australia, how do you maintain that culture nationwide in all of these offices? Because you can't physically be there, obviously, in all the offices at the same time.
With great difficulty. And earlier in the year, we also recruited 2 staff members from Sri Lanka. So they work the same hours. So they wake up very early because it's a 5.5 hour time difference, and our team starts at 8:30. Yeah. But they've been fantastic. And I trust my people. I trust the people who work in Australia to connect with them regularly. And for all of our staff, lawyers and assistants, they connect once a day in the morning to make sure that there is direction in terms of what needs to be prioritised on that day and perhaps that week at the start of the week.
I think another thing I'll add on to that is that as a leader, you embody these values, and then them looking up to you, you really are their role model that they follow in. And I think that's a very important piece to highlight on, is that a true leader that will be respected and people will follow in their footsteps is someone that embodies these values, and then they can follow through. So the fact that you spoke through these cases where you do that with your clients, it highlights that that's what's needed to be able to successfully lead a team like that and maintain that culture as well. Even if you're not there, they'll just think, what would Sach do in this situation?
Yes, and Yara, because of the distance, we make sure we meet regularly, virtually, so that I can talk to those values, so that I can talk about some of these stories of clients, of battles that I've won with difficult opponents. We connect once a week on a Monday as a team. Mondays at 10 a.m. is our team huddle, team meeting, where we reflect on the last week. We talk about what's coming up. We talk about wins. We talk about not so great outcomes as well. I think that's important, especially in a firm which involves a lot of young lawyers, for them to appreciate it's not all about winning, and you're not going to win every case. And we talk about other administrative requirements of the firm from an accounts point of view, from an operational point of view. But I think as leaders, we have to embody the values and we have to be storytellers. And I think the more we talk about the purpose, the more we talk about how our values have been demonstrated in our cases, I think that goes a long way in terms of instilling a consistent culture where the whole team, irrespective of their geographical location, embodies the firm's purpose and values.
And you've got an open space for communication and accountability, I can see. Offering these times where you can self-reflect as a team in a group environment where we can say, you know, we could have done better in this situation, or be open about a certain mistake they've done. Because I think in a lot of situations, people, especially in junior roles, feel really afraid to speak up when making a mistake, in fear of repercussion and bad negative feedback, essentially, from their leader. So you provide that opposite environment where people can be open and learn from these mistakes, and they can also get advice from you.
I like to think so, Yara. I do talk about during those reflections what we could have done differently to alter the outcome, especially in those cases that have not gone so well. In recent times, we've talked about client management and the challenge of representing clients who don't follow advice. And we reflected on our learnings from one case where we just held on to that client with a view to convince them to follow the advice, but it was too late. And then ultimately the case was unsuccessful. So the next time it happened, which wasn't too long after, we gave the client an opportunity to follow advice. We involved senior counsel, but it got to a point where the client was still adamant about wanting more compensation than what we had recommended. And there was a number of risks associated in his case, which he was just ignoring. And unfortunately came to a point where we had to cease acting. But the benefit of creating a space where we can communicate is that we can learn from each other. I may have done this for 15 years, but I can still learn from a lawyer who's been doing this for not very long, 1 year, 2 year. And there is nothing embarrassing about learning from someone younger.
Of course. And I think there's always room for growth. I think
Absolutely.
no matter how long you've lived, how long you've been in any industry,
Yes.
there's always room for growth, because I think we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and there's
Yes.
always gaps in our skills or gaps in knowledge that someone else can have. And you
Yes.
give that opportunity where we can come and share it together.
Yes.
But you work as unison as a team as well. And then you're open with your clients about it. And I think that's what makes that relationship work, that client-lawyer relationship.
Yes.
And that's truly admirable. I think that's one of the biggest things that a lawyer can have in his law firm and maintain to ensure the success, not just of their own career, but also the safety and well-being of the client, and ensuring that you're working in the best favor of the client and getting them what they need and what they deserve, essentially.
I completely agree. And to add to that, the safety and well-being of my people, because my people are priority.
Yep.
Because Maxim Injury Lawyers would not be what it is today if it wasn't for our people. And so the psychological safety of my people is paramount. And if I find that a client is compromising my clients, my team members' psychological well-being, then I will step in, because no one goes to work to get it, to be yelled at, or to have a client be aggressive towards them, or passively aggressive towards them. So I make that a point to tell my team that I have your back, and if you're in a situation where you are uncomfortable, I want you to come and talk to me. And I want you to engage my involvement or the involvement of our other senior lawyers.
Yep. So, and you maintain that great culture, I can see. And I see where it makes it a great place to work, because you've got a leader that you can look up to, and you've got a leader that cares about his people. No, that's truly admirable.
Thanks, yeah.
Now, what would you say there are some misconceptions people would have around personal injury in general?
That we're ambulance chasers.
Okay.
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about plaintiff personal injury lawyers is that we run after ambulances, handing out our business cards. So that's a misconception that we want quashed, because at the end of the day, we are helping those individuals in ambulances get back on their feet. And what we do quite passionately and fiercely is to make sure that their cases are well presented, so they get the maximum amount of money from the insurance companies, because they're deserving of it.
Yep, of course. Now, I want to touch on a little bit of what you mentioned earlier about your personal upbringing. Now, because success in law is often built on resilience. What has resilience been like, and what does it mean to you in your own journey?
Yes, especially running a business as well. Being in law, you have to be resilient, but equally when you are in business, you've got to be resilient. I had to develop that resilience from a young age, having grown up with a single mum, and having witnessed what I witnessed. And so for me, that was a good learning experience that has put me in stead for the challenges that were to come in my in running a business and being a lawyer. For me, being resilient is about not letting failures break you down, persisting, even in the face of adversity, showing up, being consistent, even if I've had a bad experience at work, knowing that, reminding myself about the purpose. Why am I here? I'm here to help people. I'm here to help people who are going through the worst chapter of their lives, and I'm good at what I do. And even though I may have faced a challenge, whether it be through a client, whether it be through an opponent, ultimately, I know what my purpose is, and that helps me maintain my resilience, and it helps me persevere through challenges and adversities. Certainly not easy, Yara, and I've had my fair share of challenges this year and last year in particular, but just remembering why I do what I do. And for me also, in that process, achieving a good outcome and having a client express their gratitude, saying, Sach, this is going to make a world of difference, that reminds me of why I do what I do, and that inspires me to persevere in the face of adversity.
Yep. And part of remaining resilient, I'm sure there would be daily habits, and you mentioned earlier going to the gym and breath work and things like that. What do you do to stay, emotionally balanced and mentally clear to be able to continue being resilient and persevering, there always needs to be a support system or something that you always do in your own time that kind of helps you stay balanced and, grounded.
Yara, you're going to laugh when you hear this. So as part of this journey, I have a number of advisors. I've got an amazing wife, Delaney. I've got three beautiful girls, Giselle, Ariel and Chanel. I also have a leadership coach. I also have a life coach. And there was recently, about a few months ago, I was telling my life coach about some of the challenges I was having at work, and it was one of those pity discussions where, why me? Why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this, blah, blah, blah. And he said, Sach, get a life. And those words still echo in my mind, because until that discussion, my life centered around being a personal injury lawyer, running Maxim Injury Lawyers, finishing work, going to my family, and being a dad, being a husband. I was exhausted. I wasn't doing anything that was just for me. I mean, I love training, but that in itself wasn't enough. And so he said to me, you've got to find joy in life. And yes, children bring so much joy.
100%.
My wife brings me so much joy. My business, Maxim, my people, my clients bring me so much joy. But it's a bit different. And so what I've recently started doing is singing.
Okay.
And so there is a music school, which is just around the corner from here. I go and for half an hour, I sing very badly. And that is my little escape during the week.
So you let the energy and the emotion out.
I belt it out. That's how I get rid of my frustrations for that day or week, by singing, belting it out.
It's like we should take you to karaoke then and see how you do.
Bring it on, yeah.
Or the press. Have you heard of the press that opened up in the CBD?
No.
They have a karaoke room opened up by Maryvale Group.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a jazz club, bar, and they've got a karaoke room on the side.
Okay.
You definitely recommend it if you want to go out with a group of friends and
I could take my team.
Pelt your heart out. Yeah, definitely recommend. The vibes there are very good.
I can't wait to go. Yep. Although my wife and kids will probably stop me because they don't love the sound of my voice. And I often sing to my kids when I want them to do something and when I find that they're not doing it. So I'll just give I'll try and instill some discipline through song. And they're like, Daddy, stop. And I was like, okay, I'll stop once you do as I say.
So it's the little things in life, I think, sometimes that we overlook in moments of being sucked in by work and daily routines, that we don't realize that I think life is much bigger than the bubbles that we're in.
That's right.
Even going traveling, even like for me personally as well, when I go traveling, I think, oh, wow, there's a much larger world out there. And you sometimes get sucked into the day-to-day of your own life that you don't realize that there is little enjoyment in just small things like singing, for example.
Yes.
Just having a walk by the beach in a different city, things like that. It really grounds you, I think.
Oh,
it reminds you of your purpose as well, in my opinion.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And taking opportunities that come your way, which you ordinarily wouldn't do. I think that's really important as well, just trying something new, whether it's learning a language or, I guess in my case, the singing. Last month, I also had a stint at modelling. A friend of mine invited me to model one of his clothes, and it ended up being a runway, and I wouldn't think to do something like that. And I did it. And one of the models was 18. I'm 38, so 20 years older than these models. But it was an experience. And it, again, opened my eyes to another field of another industry altogether, and an incredibly lovely group of people. So you've got to take opportunities. You've got to do things you wouldn't ordinarily do and just find that joy in life.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. The modelling gig sounds phenomenal, just strutting down that runway and, being able to suck in that energy around you, all that positivity, I think is always phenomenal, and surrounding yourself with art.
Yes.
Because I'm a big fashion lover, and I think admiring fashion is like admiring art. When you've got a true love for it, there's definitely an enjoyment of being there on the runway and just seeing the creative art of a designer that's put like hours and hours of needling and things like that into bringing it to life, and for people in that moment to see it for the first time and witness it is phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort, especially these designers. They do an incredible job. And some of the pieces were very unique. And I suppose from my end, just to focus and walk and knowing there's people around taking photos, but having to just, focus on walking forwards and backwards. And I mean, look, I don't know if I'll do it again, Yara. It was a lot of fun and I'm glad I did it, because my job day to day is not glamorous. It's about serving people. It's about helping people. And I get so much joy from that. But you got to take these opportunities and embrace it.
And go out of your comfort zone as well. Because although you may be ready to walk into a courtroom and, face a judge and fight for your client, you may not be ready to walk on a runway and just have to, strut on a runway and show off what you're wearing. It's a lot different environments and a lot different demographic of people that you're surrounded with as well.
Yes.
But it's a good opportunity for learning about yourself and learning from other people around you too.
You put that perfectly, because I've got no qualms walking to a courtroom or standing up and speaking in front of a judge, but I was so nervous ahead of this walk, but got through it.
Okay. I'm going to take your advice from that. I might try out the modelling at some point. I'm a lover of fashion. That just hit the spot for me. Maybe one day. It's in the path. Okay, so you've been featured in the Australian Financial Review, like I mentioned earlier, and you've been recognised across the industry. How do you personally define success beyond all these titles and awards?
Yeah, great question. Success for me is more than accolades and recognition. Success for me is when a client says, "Thank you, Sach, you've changed my life," or "Thank you, Sach, I can get back on my feet, I can focus, I can put this behind me and I can move on." Success for me is if a team member says, "Sach, thanks for the opportunity, I've learned a lot." And success for me is, hopefully one day my kids when they're older, will look back and say, "Dad was so hardworking. He had a really good work ethic, but he was always there for me." Success for me will be when my wife says, "Sach worked very hard, but he was present for me and he's my best friend." So for me, those things are probably a better indicator of my success than any recognitions and awards.
Yep. And that's truly admirable again. It's these personal moments that sometimes people overlook, but it's nice to see that you've got that, because once you've got that vision, you've got that fulfillment as well. And you're not being sucked in by the chase of the awards or the chase of a title, when in reality it's more about the success of your client's case, the well-being of your people and the well-being of your family and your family's happiness. And it's these little moments that truly make an individual happy and truly make a successful leader as well, with a successful business thriving underneath them.
I think so, Yara. And I love running Maxim Injury Lawyers. I love what we do. I love the people I work with sincerely. And we have some incredibly inspiring clients. But equally, life is more than work.
Yep.
Life is much more than work. It's about family. And it's about being present for those that matter the most. And for me, that's my wife and kids. And one of the challenges I have in the current state of my firm is that I'm constantly working. I'm working not just during the week. I'm working, every hour of the day, even at nights when I come back from work. I'm working on the weekends. I'm trying to reduce that. But for me to be present requires effort. And I would love to get to a point where I don't have to work as hard as I am right now. As much as I love the work, I also need to make sure that I create the time for my girls.
Yep, that makes sense. Now, going back to the earlier point that you mentioned about your client, has there been a case or a client that's changed your outlook on life or reminded you why you do what you do?
Absolutely. One of the most joyous aspects of what I do is the people I meet, the clients I serve. A client by the name of Anne comes to mind. And it was 2018. I had started Maxim in March of 2018. And in about September of 2018, I had a call come from a gentleman who said, Sach, I got your details from my friend who was a criminal lawyer. He said that my mother-in-law should reach out to you and talk about what happened. What had happened was in 2016, there was a thunderstorm asthma event in Victoria. 10 people died. And they died from asthma attacks. And this particular lady was looking at pursuing a claim on behalf of her husband because her husband was having an attack. They had called the ambulance. They were told that an ambulance was on its way, but it never arrived. Despite multiple phone calls, an ambulance never arrived. And so the argument was that because they were the ambulance services and the emergency services telecommunications authority were negligent for misleading this family into believing that an ambulance was on its way when in fact it had not even been dispatched, thereby denying this family the opportunity to take her husband to hospital and potentially save his life. So I remember driving about an hour to see this lady. I was greeted by her at the front door and taken to the kitchen, which is where I conducted the interview. I read the coroner's report. The coroner's report said in there that the delay in dispatch of the ambulance did not materially alter the outcome of this individual's death. So I knew this was going to be hard. And she also showed me an advice from a competitor law firm, a big national law firm, saying she had no prospects of success. And so for me, I knew the challenge, but she presented very genuinely and her story was very logical. If they just told me, I would have driven him. And so I took the case on. And I initiated proceedings almost straight away because there were some time limit issues. The case attracted some media attention and all of a sudden I was getting calls from all the news networks asking for comment about the case. I knew that to win this case, I needed expert evidence and I turned to a respiratory physician by the name of Professor Jonathan Berdon. And Dr. Berdon provided a report that said, even though, let me start that again. The report said he may have survived, albeit with some brain damage, but the extent to which he would have been damaged it was unknown. And so it was an opinion that enabled me to settle this case for a lot of money for this lady. And I'll never forget it, Yara, the mediation, she came with a frame of her husband and she wanted all the insurers to see her husband. And that love that this lady had for her husband was remarkable. And the determination by this lady to want to achieve justice for her husband was incredible. And that's a case I'll never forget. And for me, one of my key learnings is that we need to take on the hard cases. We need to take on the big insurers. It doesn't matter how big the insurance companies are. If we can present a compelling case that demonstrates negligence and that these organisations were at risk of being found negligent, then there's a way forward.
Yep. Dealing with these hard cases and taking them on, I'm sure you'd either have moments of doubt or you'd be able to deal with them and not have them. But the question is, how can you overcome that? How would you be able to overlook these little moments where you would be doubtful as to whether or not you'd be able to make your case, even though you truly believe in it?
Yara, for us, it all comes down to medical evidence.
Yep.
And so medical evidence and expert evidence. Now, every common law claim requires proving negligence. And so even though the individual may suffer from catastrophic injuries, unfortunately, if they can't prove negligence as against someone, they're not entitled to compensation, to damages. And so the way I overcome doubt is by preparing cases well, by getting the evidence from the experts, whether that's an expert doctor or whether that's an engineer, or it's speaking to witnesses who worked in the same company as my client when they sustained injuries. That's how I overcome doubt in a case. Now, if I do all of those things and if the case is not strengthened, then I will give my honest advice to my client to say, we've done all of our due diligence, we've gotten expert opinion from all the right people, and unfortunately, it hasn't gone your way. But that's the way that I overcome doubt.
Yep. And that's the way that you've built your practice and you maintain that relationship with your clients as well. And then it's admiring that you are open with them and honest too, because I think that's a key aspect that every lawyer should have with their client and maintain.
You must, Yara, because as lawyers, there's only so much that we can do. As a personal injury lawyer, I'm employed by a client to get them money. And in order to get them money, there is certain criteria, thresholds that have to be established. And I owe it as a good lawyer. I owe it to my client to be transparent and honest in terms of what I can and can't do. And I think when you make that clear, when the client appreciates the role of a personal injury lawyer, it strengthens the relationship and it strengthens the prospects of your client following your advice.
Now that's who Sach is. You know, you built that integrity and the weight of that name means something in the industry. How do you maintain that integrity and that level of trust in everything that you do?
By doing the right thing. And I say that in the context of clients, listening to them, being frank and being honest and open with them about what I can do for them, making sure that their cases are well prepared, making sure that no stone is left unturned in terms of the case preparation. With my opponents, it's about hearing them as well, listening to their case and respectfully and professionally putting forward our case and being empathetic towards them, the challenges they face with their clients, and respectfully but fiercely advocating to get as much compensation for our clients. But also making sure that the rule of law is enforced and making sure ultimately that I carry myself with ethics and that I do the right thing by my clients and always conducting myself to the highest ethical standard and maintaining that professionalism to my clients, to my team, and to my opponents. I've always said to our team members, the standard of professionalism expected of us here at Maxim, particularly given we are a firm built with a number of people from various ethnically diverse backgrounds, the standard is much higher than it would be for our Anglo-Saxon friends. I've always maintained that it's important that I speak well, dress well, and present professionally, because if I take a step wrong, that would be more criticised than it would if I didn't look the way I looked. And that's still because in the legal industry, right at the top, are still older Anglo-Saxon male. And I want to make sure that I carry myself with integrity, conduct my practice ethically, and represent my clients as a fierce advocate who knows the rule of law.
And these are the true values of success. I really do think that this is what differentiates between a successful lawyer or a successful entrepreneur even, down to someone that doesn't embody these values, because at the end of the day, this is the most inexpensive thing that you can have that resonates and makes someone truly authentically successful, and also one of a kind to find these days, which is someone that embodies ethical values, someone that you can trust, someone that has integrity, and you know that they're being totally honest with you and they don't have a hidden agenda in behind the scenes of it. What role do you think as well purpose has played in this long-term success?
Knowing your purpose is so important, Yara. And as I said earlier, in terms of the challenges of running a business, there are some dates where you doubt yourself. You doubt yourself in the context of, is this the right thing to do? You know, sometimes I might reflect on a bad day and think there are other ways to make money than the stress that this job is currently bringing me. But reminding me of my purpose, and my purpose is to help as many people as I can. As far as I'm concerned, I was put here to help people.
Yeah.
And I really take pride in the fact that I am educated, I have a law degree, and I can use that law degree to help someone who is less fortunate. And so remembering that purpose helps me get through some of the darkest, hardest days.
I think purpose played a crucial role with you as well earlier on when you were working with the larger insurers.
Yes.
And it's what helped you, I think, maintain that drive and passion to remain in workers' comp, essentially, and not move on to something else.
Absolutely. For me, my purpose was to help people. And then all of a sudden I found myself in this incredible law firm, but where the objective just did not align with my purpose.
Yep. Now, what advice would you give to young lawyers or entrepreneurs looking to have a career that has both a lasting impact and integrity?
For the lawyers, I would say be persistent, be kind to your clients, be empathetic to who you're dealing with, whether it's clients, your colleagues, or your opponents. And conduct yourself with empathy and respect, and carry yourself professionally. To the entrepreneurs starting businesses, I would say you've got to work hard. You've got to make sure that you're not demotivated by setbacks, and to do the right thing by the person you're working for, whether that's a client, whether you're building a product. Make sure that you do the right thing, and carry yourself with integrity.
Okay.
Build that trust.
Yep. That's very essential, I think, in any industry or whatever field that you're in. Even if you work in an organization, to have that, it's very crucial. And it is one of the lasting factors that makes someone succeed. Now, reflecting on your legacy, what would you want your name to represent in law and beyond?
A very, very good question.
Yeah.
I was reflecting on this and I was thinking, what would I like to be known for? And I would love for the legal profession to recognise me as a very good lawyer who did the right thing by his clients, who achieved incredible outcomes for his clients, whilst enforcing the rule of law. And as I briefly touched on earlier with my children, the legacy that I'd love to leave them with is one where they know that their dad was there for them. Irrespective of any work obligations, their dad was there for them, and taught them how they should be treated and how they should treat others with kindness and respect.
Well, I'd like to say personally, Sach, I think you do definitely embody that. Your legacy is already at that point. You're recognised across the legal industry already, or since we've talked about it earlier. And I think you've got a beautiful family. And aside from being a successful leader, you're a great dad as well. You represent what a successful dad would have too. Spending that time with your little ones, being able to dedicate time to family, although you've got time pressure with work, I think it's one of the most important things. And the fact that you highlighted earlier on that success means to you, what you give down to your kids and the time that you spend with them, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I agree, Yara, and thank you for saying that. That means a lot.
No, that's all right. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for this lovely conversation.
I've really enjoyed it, Yara. Thanks for having me, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.